The unexpected challenger. The Galactic Consortium had ruled the Spiral Arm for 13 centuries. Their domain stretched across 3,000 star systems, encompassing 42 sentient species, all bound by the iron will of the Praetorian Council. With a fleet of 10,000 warships, the consortium maintained order through overwhelming force. No world dared resist. No species challenged their supremacy. Until today. Admiral Kelmar stood on the command deck of the Indomitable, flagship of the 7th Fleet, the mightiest collection of warships ever assembled in this sector. His scaled hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the holographic display showing his formation. 37 capital ships arranged in the classic Praetorian diamond, surrounded by over 200 support vessels and fighters. The sight never failed to fill him with pride. "Status report," he commanded, his dual-tone voice echoing across the silent bridge. "All systems optimal." "Admiral," replied Commander Vex, his second in command. "The border patrol is complete. No anomalies detected." Kelmar nodded, satisfied. This sector had been quiet for decades, ever since they'd subjugated the rebellious Arcturian colonies. Now it served as little more than a training ground for his crews, a peaceful posting where they cooled. "Admiral." The sensor officer's voice cracked with surprise. "Contact detected at bearing 227 Mark 43. Kelmar frowned. "Classification?" "Unknown, sir. Single vessel, approximately 300 meters in length. Design? Unfamiliar. Origin? Trajectory suggests it emerged from the direction of the restricted zone, sir." Kelmar's inner eyelids flickered with interest. The restricted zone contained only one noteworthy system, a backwater planet called Earth, home to a primitive species barely capable of interplanetary travel. The consortium had catalogued them a century ago, but deemed them unworthy of either conquest or alliance. The humans, as they called themselves, had been quarantined behind a sensor network, left to develop in isolation until they either destroyed themselves or evolved into something useful. "Magnify," ordered Kelmar. The holographic display zoomed in, revealing a sleek vessel unlike any in the consortium's database. Its hull was dark, almost black, with strange blue energy patterns pulsing beneath the surface. No visible weapons emplacements, no standard engine configuration. It moved with a grace that suggested advanced propulsion technology, far beyond what the humans should possess. "Sir, the vessel is transmitting," said the communications officer. "Let's hear it." The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a calm, feminine voice filled the command deck. "Attention Consortium Fleet. This is Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth vessel Defiance. Your presence in this sector violates the sovereignty of human space. Withdraw immediately." Stunned silence fell across the bridge. Then, like a wave breaking, laughter erupted from the command crew. Kelmar himself couldn't suppress a chuckle. A human vessel, ordering the 7th Fleet to withdraw. He shook his head in amusement. "Send a standard warning. If they don't retreat in 30 seconds, disable their engines. We'll add them to the zoological collection on Primus IV." Commander Vex relayed the order, but his expression remained troubled. "Sir, our databases show humans shouldn't have this level of technology. Perhaps we should." "They don't," Kelmar interrupted. "This is clearly stolen technology, or perhaps some rogue faction has supplied them with a vessel. Either way, they'll soon learn the price of challenging the consortium." The communications officer sent the warning, but the human ship maintained its course, now accelerating toward the fleet. "Target lock established," reported the weapons officer. "Disabling shot ready." "Fire," Kelmar ordered dismissively, already turning away to review the patrol reports. The nearest destroyer, the Resolute, fired a single pulse from its forward batteries, a shot designed to overload the target's power systems without destroying the vessel. It was a technique perfected over centuries, one that had disabled thousands of ships across the galaxy. The blue bolt streaked across space toward the human vessel. And then something impossible happened. The pulse struck what appeared to be empty space 3 kilometers in front of the human ship and exploded in a cascade of energy. A shield, invisible until impact, flared brilliant white before fading again to transparency. "Impossible," whispered Commander Vex. "Our sensors detect no shield generators." Before Kelmar could respond, the human vessel accelerated suddenly, its speed doubling, then tripling in seconds. Blue energy gathered at its prow, coalescing into a sphere of blinding intensity. "Evasive maneuvers," Kelmar shouted, but it was too late. The energy sphere launched forward, passing through the Resolute's shields as if they didn't exist. It struck the destroyer amidships, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a flower blooming in slow motion, the massive warship began to break apart, blue energy coursing through its structure, severing molecular bonds. The Resolute, pride of the 7th Fleet, disintegrated into a cloud of debris. 8,000 crew members, gone in an instant. All ships, battle formation. Kelmar roared, shock giving way to rage. "Destroy that vessel." The fleet responded with practiced precision, capital ships moving to surround the human vessel while fighters streamed from launch bays. Energy weapons lanced out from dozens of ships simultaneously, converging on the lone target. Once again, the invisible shield flared white, absorbing the barrage without apparent effort. Then the Defiance moved, its maneuvers defying the laws of physics as understood by consortium science. It accelerated faster than tracking systems could follow, leaving only a blue trail of energy in its wake. It reappeared behind the cruiser Inviolable, another sphere of energy forming at its prow. "Captain Rice to Consortium Fleet," came the calm voice again. "That was a warning. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Your shields cannot stop our attack. Withdraw now, or we will be forced to continue this demonstration." Kelmar slammed his fist on the command console. "All batteries, fire at will. Launch all fighters. I want that ship destroyed." The space around the human vessel erupted with weapon fire, a storm of destructive energy that would have annihilated a small moon. Fighters swarmed toward it from all directions, launching missiles and energy torpedoes. The Defiance moved like a dancer among raindrops, impossibly fast, impossibly agile. Weapon fire that should have struck it somehow missed, passing through the space it had occupied milliseconds earlier. Fighters that came too close suddenly lost power, drifting helplessly as the human ship passed by. And all the while, it struck back. One by one, consortium warships began to fall. Some disintegrated like the Resolute. Others simply went dark, all systems failing simultaneously. A few exploded spectacularly, their reactor cores breached by pinpoint strikes. On the bridge of the Indomitable, chaos reigned. Damage reports flooded in from all quarters of the fleet. Escape pods launched by the hundreds from stricken vessels. The command display showed a scene of unprecedented devastation, the mighty 7th Fleet being systematically dismantled by a single ship. "Sir," Commander Vex's voice was tight with controlled panic. "We've lost 17 capital ships and over 100 support vessels. Whatever technology they're using, it's beyond anything in our database." Kelmar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How could this be happening? A single human ship defeating the mightiest fleet in the sector. It was inconceivable. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Praetorian Command. They're ordering us to withdraw." "What?" Kelmar whirled to face him. "The 7th Fleet does not retreat, especially not from a single enemy vessel." "Sir," Vex said quietly, "if we don't withdraw, there won't be a 7th Fleet left to defend anything." Before Kelmar could respond, the deck shuddered beneath his feet. Warning klaxons blared throughout the ship. "Direct hit to our port shield generator," reported the damage control officer. "Shield capacity down to 40%. The Defiance appeared on the main view screen, approaching the flagship with deliberate slowness now, its blue energy patterns pulsing with hypnotic rhythm. "Final warning, Admiral Kelmar," said Captain Reyes, And Kelmar felt a chill run down his spine at the use of his name. The consortium's days of unchallenged rule are over. Humanity has endured your quarantine, your dismissal of our worth, your exploitation of neighboring systems. We have watched and learned, and now we have emerged. The human ship halted 5 kilometers from the Indomitable, its energy patterns shifting to a deeper, more ominous blue. You have 1 minute to begin withdrawal from this sector. After that, we will resume our demonstration. Choose wisely, Admiral. Your Praetorian masters have already made their choice. Kelmar stood frozen, decades of military discipline warring with the instinct for survival. Around him, his command crew waited in tense silence for his decision. Commander Vex stepped closer, speaking softly. Sir, we've lost over half the fleet. Whatever this technology is, we cannot counter it. A tactical retreat would allow us to analyze what we've seen and develop a response. Kelmar's inner eyelids flickered rapidly as he processed the situation. The humans had somehow leaped centuries ahead in technological development. Or perhaps they had always been hiding their true capabilities, waiting for this moment. Either way, the consortium faced a threat unlike any in its long history. Signal the fleet, he said finally, his dual-tone voice heavy with defeat. Begin withdrawal procedures. Standard dispersal pattern. As the order went out, Kelmar turned back to the view screen, watching the Defiance with newfound respect and fear. This isn't over, human, he whispered. The consortium does not forget, and it does not forgive. The turning of the tide. Captain Alina Reyes watched the consortium fleet scatter across the system, their formation broken, their might shattered. From her command chair on the bridge of the Defiance, she allowed herself a small smile, the first in the 3 days since this confrontation began. They're running, said Commander Marcus Chen, her executive officer, disbelief evident in his voice. We actually did it. Elena nodded, her dark eyes never leaving the tactical display. For now. But they'll be back, and in greater numbers. The bridge of the Defiance looked nothing like the consortium's ornate command centers. It was utilitarian, almost Spartan, with crew stations arranged in a horseshoe around the central holographic projection. Every surface served a purpose. Nothing was wasted. Like humanity itself, the ship had evolved to maximize efficiency with limited resources. Damage report, Alina called out. Lieutenant Park at the engineering station responded immediately. Harmony drive at 73% efficiency. Quantum shield generators stable but showing strain from prolonged engagement. The phase cannon requires a 12-hour cooldown cycle before we can fire at full capacity again. Better than expected, Alina thought. The Defiance had been designed for short, decisive engagements, not prolonged battles against an entire fleet. That they'd emerged relatively unscathed was testament to both the ship's revolutionary systems and the skill of her crew. What's our status on the quantum entanglement transmitter? She asked. Communications Officer Dias glanced up from her console. Ready to transmit, Captain. Earth Defense Command is standing by for your report. Elena took a deep breath. This moment had been 15 years in the making, ever since the day humanity discovered they weren't alone in the universe, not through detection of alien signals, as scientists had long expected, but through the recovery of a damaged consortium scout ship that had crashed in the Atacama Desert. The ship's databanks had revealed the truth. The galaxy was populated by countless species, united under the iron fist of the consortium. And humans, deemed primitive and lacking potential, had been quarantined in their home system, forgotten except as an occasional subject of xenobiological study. The revelation had changed everything. Nations that had been enemies for centuries united under a single purpose. Resources once devoted to internal conflicts were redirected toward a crash program of technological development. The recovered scout ship had provided clues, fragments of advanced technology that human scientists reverse-engineered and improved upon. While the consortium believed humans to be confined to their solar system, struggling with primitive chemical rockets, Earth had secretly launched a new generation of ships. Vessels powered by the Harmony drive, technology that manipulated the quantum foam of space-time itself. Ships protected by shields that existed partially in other dimensions, making them nearly impervious to conventional weapons, and armed with phase cannons that could disrupt matter at the subatomic level. The Defiance was the culmination of that program, the first of its kind, sent beyond the quarantine line to announce humanity's emergence to the galaxy. "Open the channel," Elena ordered. The holographic projection shifted, showing the stern face of Admiral Helena Rodriguez, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces. "Captain Reyes," Rodriguez acknowledged. "We've been monitoring as best we can from this distance. Did the demonstration achieve its objectives?" Elena nodded. "Yes, Admiral. The 7th Fleet has withdrawn from the sector. We destroyed or disabled approximately 60% of their forces before they retreated. The harmonic analysis indicates they were using primarily particle beam weapons and graviton torpedoes, exactly as our intelligence suggested." Rodriguez's expression remained impassive, but Elena could see the tension around her eyes ease slightly. "And the Defiance? How did our systems perform under actual combat conditions?" As the transmission ended, Elena turned to her executive officer. "Set course for the Praetorian border marker. Maximum stealth approach until we're in position." Chen nodded, already inputting the commands. "Do you think they'll listen, Captain? The consortium has ruled for over 1,000 years. They won't surrender their power easily." Elena gazed at the tactical display, where the retreating consortium ships were still visible, limping away from the confrontation that had shattered their belief in their own invincibility. "They don't have to surrender," she said quietly. "They just have to make room. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy, Commander. We just want our rightful place in it." As the Defiance engaged its harmony drive, disappearing from conventional sensors in a flash of blue energy, the news of its victory was already spreading across consortium space. A single human ship had defeated the mighty 7th Fleet. The impossible had happened, and on dozens of worlds, oppressed species who had lived under consortium rule for generations began to whisper a new word, a symbol of hope: Defiance. 3 days later, the Defiance hovered at the edge of the Praetorian system, the heart of consortium power. Cloaked by its advanced stealth systems, it waited while consortium vessels rushed past, carrying reinforcements to the border sectors and evacuating high-ranking officials from potentially vulnerable outposts. Elena stood before her assembled crew in the ship's central hall. 120 humans, the best Earth had to offer, selected from every nation, every background. "The diplomatic package will be transmitted in 1 hour," she told them. "It contains our terms: recognition of human sovereignty, removal of all quarantine beacons, access to consortium trade routes, and reparations for the century of isolation they imposed on us." She paused, looking at each face in turn. "We don't know how they'll respond. The consortium has never negotiated as equals with a species they considered inferior. But what we accomplished against the 7th Fleet has undoubtedly shaken them. For the first time in their history, they face a power they cannot simply crush." Lieutenant Park raised her hand. "Captain, what if they refuse and attack in force? Even the Defiance can't stand against the entire consortium fleet." Elena nodded, acknowledging the concern. "We don't have to. The Defiance isn't alone anymore." She gestured, and the holographic projection behind her activated, showing dozens of blue dots emerging from Earth's solar system. "While we've been engaging the 7th Fleet, Earth has launched the rest of the fleet. 27 vessels, all equipped with harmony drives and phase cannons, are now deployed throughout consortium space. If the Praetorian Council rejects our terms," she let the implication hang in the air. Commander Chen stepped forward. "What the captain is saying is that this isn't just about demonstrating our technology. It's about demonstrating our resolve. The consortium built its power through fear. We're showing them that fear works both ways." The crew nodded, their expressions solemn. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing it might be one way, that they might be making history, or becoming martyrs for humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. As the meeting dispersed, Elena returned to the bridge, where Communications Officer Diaz was monitoring consortium transmissions. "Anything interesting?" Elena asked. Diaz looked up, her eyes wide. "They're in complete disarray, Captain. The defeat of the 7th Fleet has triggered something like a political crisis. Some factions are calling for immediate retaliation with everything they have. Others are arguing for caution, even suggesting negotiations might be necessary." Elena hadn't expected that. The consortium had always presented a united front to the galaxy, ruling through absolute consensus enforced by the Praetorian Council. "Any word from our intelligence assets about the Council itself?" Diaz consulted her display. "According to our deep cover sources, they've been in emergency session since news of the battle reached them. No decisions announced yet." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Keep monitoring. I want to know the moment there's any significant change." The hour passed quickly. As the designated time approached, Elena gave the order to decloak the Defiance and power up its communications array to maximum capacity. "All consortium frequencies open, Captain," Diaz reported. "We're broadcasting to approximately 70% of their controlled systems simultaneously." Elena stepped forward, straightening her uniform. The camera drones positioned themselves before her, ready to capture her image for transmission across the galaxy. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth vessel Defiance," she began, her voice steady and clear. "To the Praetorian Council and all citizens of the consortium." The bridge crew watched in silence as she continued, detailing humanity's terms for peaceful coexistence, explaining that the alternative would be continued demonstrations of Earth's new technological capabilities. "We do not seek war," she concluded. "We seek recognition and respect. The age of consortium dominance is ending. A new era of galactic cooperation is beginning. You may join us in creating it, or you may resist and face the consequences. The choice is yours. You have 48 hours to respond." As the transmission ended, Elena turned to her executive officer. "Now we wait, Commander." Chen nodded, his expression grim. "And if they choose war?" Elena's gaze returned to the tactical display, where the 27 human ships positioned throughout consortium space were now visible, having decloaked simultaneously with the Defiance. "Then we show them that humanity doesn't make empty threats," she said quietly. "But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. The consortium has survived for 13 centuries because it's pragmatic. When faced with a fight they can't win, they'll adapt." The response came not in 48 hours, but in 12. A single consortium vessel, smaller than a destroyer but bearing the distinctive markings of the Praetorian Council, approached the Defiance under a flag of truce. "They're requesting permission to dock, Captain," Diaz reported, surprise evident in her voice. "They say they have a representative of the Council aboard who wishes to discuss our terms in person." Elena exchanged glances with Commander Chen. This was unexpected and potentially dangerous, but also an opportunity that couldn't be ignored. "Grant permission," she decided. "Security Protocol Alpha, and have the diplomatic team meet me in the conference room." As the consortium vessel docked with the Defiance, Elena couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. From a quarantined species deemed unworthy of notice to a power that could bring the mighty consortium to the negotiating table, all in the span of a single generation. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same again, and humanity would finally take its rightful place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as equals, not through subjugation, but through defiance. The door to the conference room slid open, and the future of two civilizations began.